Hi, everyone. So we're going to just wait another minute for people to join. We've got a big group of folks joining us tonight, so I want to make sure everyone can get in the room. So just one more moment. It's great to see so many people telling us where you're at. We've got people from all over, which is fantastic. Okay, it looks like we've got a critical mass. So again, welcome. We're happy to see you here. Thank you for meeting us at the Formosa. Even if it has to be virtually, it's almost as good as the real thing, but it's a good thing. We actually have a surprise for you all because you're going to see Formosa in real life from your computer. So, or your phone, or however you're connecting with us. I'm Adrian Scott Fine. I'm the Director of Advocacy for the Los Angeles Conservancy. We are super excited to feature the Formosa tonight. It's a true Hollywood landmark. And the Conservancy was fortunate enough to play a small part in its recent rebirth by providing grant funding to help with the restoration of its red car trolley. And we'll see and talk more about the trolley a little bit later. The reopening of the Formosa just a little over a year ago now is really a great preservation story for Los Angeles. And while it's in West Hollywood, and as this past year it became officially a designated historic landmark of WeHo, it really transcends West Hollywood, and it's a landmark for everyone and anyone in Los Angeles. It really does have that kind of feel. It also shows how, quite honestly, a beloved legacy business, how much it's beloved, and in the age of COVID, how we need to support these places now more than ever. They're really the touchstones or the anchors of our communities. And for many legacy businesses, they're at great risk right now. So that's part of the reason why we're bringing this program to you tonight and highlighting Formosa, but it's a way to highlight legacy businesses overall. So the first point of business is does everyone have their cocktail? So this is a virtual cheer. Everyone should have their cocktail. Hopefully they have the special cocktail of the night provided by our friends at the 1933 group in the Formosa, the Yi Ni Lu. Unfortunately, I did not have those ingredients at hand. So for me, it's more of a classic wine. So I hope you have a nice cocktail with you as well. This would be fun. We're all separated, but we're all together as well in this group. We have more than 350 people sign up for this. So it's a great group of folks. So we're excited. But let me start with some introductions. We've got some really great special guests who happen to be very connected to the Formosa, one who happens to be in the Formosa right now, which is great. So let me start with Alison Martino. Alison is a Los Angeles-based television producer, documentarian, columnist, and a lifelong resident of the city of Los Angeles. She also curates Vintage Los Angeles, an ever-growing photo-centric page on Facebook, Instagram. If you're not a member already, haven't been following her, you should. It's addictive. She has amazing things that she posts on there, and it's one of the best ways to get to know the city of Los Angeles by understanding its past and where we've been and also where we're going. So definitely follow Alison. And Alison, if you can turn on your video, if you're not already, please join us, and so we can all see you in person, with your drink.
Yes.
She has a fantastic style and collection. So thank you, Alison, for joining us. And then next up is Bobby Green, who is the co-founder and creative designer of the 1933 group. He's responsible for restoring and reimagining some of LA's most successful night spots, including West Hollywood's Formosa Cafe, which is why we're here tonight, but also places like the Highland Park Bowl, the barrel-shaped Idle Hour in North Hollywood, including the Bulldog in the rear at the beer garden. And next up is their long-awaited plan to reopen and relocate the beloved and iconic Tale of the Pup. It's a 1946 walk-up stand shaped like a hot dog in a bun. And honestly, if that place doesn't come back soon, we're all waiting for it. It's something I will actually start eating hot dogs again. Bobby, if you can get this up and running. So we're all looking forward to that coming back as part of your collection. So Bobby, we can see you too. Nice. With your drink as well. So welcome to our folks. Before we get into kind of hearing more about the Formosa and what all has happened there, and also what's happening to other beloved legacy businesses, here's kind of the rundown, or what we're having in mind for tonight. So first, we're going to have plenty of time to do chat with Alison and Bobby. Get your questions ready. We're going to use the Q&A function below on the bottom of your screen. So enter your questions at any time during the program tonight. We'll get to as many questions as possible, but definitely use the Q&A function. That way we can better field questions, or if we have repeat questions, we'll use that. Second, we're going to do a personal tour, courtesy of Bobby of the Formosa. He's there in person. You also might get a tutorial on making a cocktail. And lastly, we're going to watch a short video clip of the Formosa from Alison's program on Spectrum News 1, which is really great. It gives you, in a very succinct, short period of time, almost the full story of what's happened in the last few years to bring the Formosa back. But to start us off, Alison and Bobby are going to keep sipping their cocktails. I'm going to do a quick kind of brief summary and bring everybody up to speed about legacy businesses, the work that we're doing at the Conservancy, why legacy businesses matter, and how we can support places, more legacy businesses like the Formosa. So let me quickly bring up the PowerPoint one more time. So bear with me just a second. And if you guys want to stay with your visual on or not, it's up to you.
Well, welcome to Happy Hour, first of all, everybody.
Thank you. Okay. Nice. Thank you so much for the assist. I appreciate it. So we launched our work looking at legacy businesses in November, but it really comes on the heels of working with places like the Formosa, or working at Norms, or Tom Bergen's, or right now looking at Tex and other places, and realizing that these places are really the anchors to so many neighborhoods and communities throughout Los Angeles, and they really are those touchstones. If you really want to understand the story of LA, you need to understand legacy businesses. So part of our goal is to bring awareness, understanding, appreciation of these places, but also to help save them and figure out, do we need to create new tools? Do we need incentives? All the kinds of things. And we were thinking about this even before COVID hit. So it's even more dire in some ways to think about, what do we do? And this is the basic definition that we've come up. We're pretty open in terms of what is a legacy business. Basically, it's a place that's been around for 25 years or more. It's a place, again, it's about its longevity and connection to the community, or contribution to the community, but it's about, they're critical to neighborhood identity. So this is Tex, Echo Park. Everyone knows Tex. And it's one of those places that really helps define the neighborhood. But Tex, or Musso and Frank, or whether you're talking about Tom Bergen's, and we can go so many of these places, and it's not just restaurants, it's your dry cleaners, it's the place where you bought your Cadillac at Casa de Cadillac, wherever. These are the kind of legacy businesses that we're talking about. It usually talks, people tend to think of restaurants first, but that's not the whole plethora of what a legacy business is. But they're at risk, and they've been at risk for either the real estate in which they're sitting on is too valuable, and so they're being sold and redevelop the sites, or they're losing their rents because the rents are going up so they can't stay. In some cases, we have longtime business owners that are retiring, and it's about who's the next generation to carry these businesses forward. And now we've got issues with COVID that brings on a whole new challenge about, how do you even operate these places at a time when you can't bring people together? And that's what these places are all about. And it really goes to this. It's about the people. It's about people that are employing other people, small businesses. They're really the heart of so much of the economics in communities, and the diversity of the people that we're working with, and that care and love these places, that are trying to keep them afloat. So that's why it is important to do takeout, whether it's at Formosa or wherever else, but to really help support these places right now, because it's supporting the people behind these places that have been carrying them for so long. And it was interesting, we wanted to look a little bit about what's been happening. So these are some of the national stats in terms of small businesses, of what's going on. So on average, it's a 22% drop between February and April of these kind of businesses that have closed. But when you look at more from the diversity side, especially people of color, it's a 41% loss for African American, Black-owned businesses. And you can see from there on out in terms of 33% for Latino-owned, 26% for Asian-owned, female-owned businesses, 25%, all above the national average. And while there's been kind of a bump and a return since some of these businesses have reopened or closed and reopened, kind of this cycle that we're in, we're nowhere close to where we were. So that's a big part of why we're doing the work that we do, and that we want people to support these businesses. And we're also reaching out to people in the city of Los Angeles and city of West Hollywood and others to see, can we create some incentive programs? Other cities have done this, like San Francisco is probably the best example in the States in terms of creating a program that helps provide relief for rent increases, things like that. And we would love to see something happening in Los Angeles, and that's something we're currently pursuing with leadership, city council members and others within the city of Los Angeles. We know other cities like West Hollywood have also expressed some interest in this too. So that's a quick and dirty breakdown of the history and some of the reason why we're working on legacy businesses. So before we start kind of more of a conversation, I want to share Alison's piece. Hopefully this one goes better than the PowerPoint. So let me try this one. Again, please assist me if it doesn't go or it's not linking. So just 1 second.
His latest project in West Hollywood just reopened to rave reviews. So, Bobby, you saved the Formosa.
Yes, I did. And I'm so blessed. I'm so fortunate to be the one to do it. Because this was my place in the 90s. And, you know, I'm a youngin' in the grand scheme of it all. I've been meeting people from the 60s, the 50s, the 40s, you know. Our grandparents hung out here.
It's not overstating the case that Bobby saved the Formosa Cafe from the wrecking ball. The storied 94-year-old cafe sat empty for 3 years until his group completed a $2.4 million restoration. Every inch of the building reflects its early Hollywood grandeur, when it was the in-place for stars to drink and dine. It was such a celebrated location, it was featured in the hit film LA Confidential.
A hooker cut to look like Lana Turner is still a hooker.
Hey!
She just looks like Lana Turner.
She is Lana Turner.
What?
She is Lana Turner.
There's Lana.
Lana. That's one of her husbands. This was our hangout. This is where we came every day. We came here for lunch, and then after work, we'd come here and have our drinks to get rid of everything and talk about a bad day or a good day.
90-year-old Hollywood executive Sam Stranges remembers Lana Turner and many old friends he met at the Formosa Cafe. And like everyone who comes through these doors, he has some great stories to tell. Like the night John Wayne had too good of a time.
He got drunk here, and he ended up sleeping here overnight. And when they were looking for him at work the next day, he was in the kitchen making scrambled eggs for himself.
Sam and I spent a long time looking at photos in the historic railroad car that was added to the restaurant in the 1940s. Well, these are just unbelievable.
Got some beauties here.
These are amazing.
There's some.
Yeah, there we go.
Bogey and Laura.
The couple.
The couple.
It's been sitting here, sort of in a state of deterioration, part of it taking case in the wall, and suddenly you can see the trolley and experience it in its all bags.
Adrian Stottfine is with the LA Conservancy, which awarded the 1933 group $150,000 for the restoration of the train car.
It was car 913, you know, the original Pacific Electric 800 series, built between 1904 and 1906. We basically find out that we have the oldest red car train in existence. How cool is that?
Details of the restoration can be seen everywhere in the Formosa Cafe, from the Elvis booth to Bugsy Siegel's floor safe to the custom wallpaper and accessories. No expense was spared. But what really catches your eye are the original photographs celebrating the old Hollywood stars who came through these doors. How many of them are in the Formosa?
There's close to 250.
Did you ever think a historic place like the Formosa, a historic destination, could have such a grand comeback?
I didn't think it could, but I think a lot of people in LA didn't think it could. They tried to get rid of it, and these guys are smart enough to make it work.
Since we're losing so many historic buildings, so many old Hollywood destinations, and how important are they to Los Angeles, Hollywood, Southern California?
You can't it's hard to even quantify that. They're the touchstones to our stories, personal stories, but the story of the place, of LA, of Hollywood. And if you don't have these reminders, it's hard to understand where you come from, where you're going.
You saved history, you saved Hollywood history, and you're doing so much of that. You're saving everything.
Someone's got to do it. The next one is Tell the Pup. I can't wait to put it back in LA for that 10-year-old kid who comes here with his parents on vacation. Because that's when I saw it. And I would go home with the memory of the Hollywood sign and the giant hot dog.
Like they say, everything old is new again. And as a historian of vintage LA, that couldn't make me happier.
That was so nice to see again.
Great. No more sharing screen from here on out. So Bobby, can we have you come back?
Good. We got pizza review. We got. Nope, I'm gonna do the pizza. You eat the ice cream.
Okay.
What's happening, Frankie? Just
So-
break up a conversation.
Let me start first of all, Bobby. How are you doing during COVID? How's Formosa doing?
Thanks for asking that question. How's the Formosa doing? I mean, not well. To be honest, I'll be 100% honest with you, not well at all. The entire restaurant industry has taken a terrible, terrible hit. The bar industry itself is even worse because, at least in California, they've been completely closed since March with no options for anything whatsoever. Restaurants, at least, you know, if they sell food, they can stay open, and now they can only stay open if there's outdoor seating and, of course, takeout. But, you know, I noticed earlier you had shown businesses down at roughly 22%. But honestly, the restaurant business, I would say, is down 80%. Formosa is probably doing about 20% of the normal sales that it usually, you know, was doing when we were open.
Okay. Wow. Those are sobering statistics, to say the least.
It is. And it's not just us. It's, you know, it's everyone that I've talked to that owns a restaurant in Los Angeles, except the McDonald's. McDonald's and Starbucks seem to be doing pretty well.
Yeah, drive-through helps. Can you, both of you, can you share your earliest, maybe first experience with the Formosa?
Well, I used to go with my dad. So he took me there probably late 70s and the early 80s. And then, of course, I discovered it again when I hit 21. So I spent a lot of Friday nights in the first two booths there when you walk in. I've had birthday parties there, my 30th birthday there. And, you know, Formosa was really also the place that we went to. And when you work in the industry, a lot of rap parties were there. So we'd have a lot of gatherings at the Formosa, and there's not a lot of places that you can have 30 or 40 people in one room. I have a lot of memories at the Formosa, especially my 30th birthday from what I remember about it.
How about you, Bobby? When did you first find your way into the Formosa?
Well, it's a tad controversial. Every time I tell people the story, they go, "Oh, you probably shouldn't tell that story," but it's true. I mean, you know, first of all, you have to go back to a time of the late '80s, and it was a very, very different city in the late '80s, and especially this strip of West Hollywood was extremely different. You know, it was a place you could go and hide out, and you know, no one really bothered you around here. So I think I first came to the Formosa, I would say maybe the age of 19, because nobody carded anybody. back in that time. Really most of LA, but especially Hollywood, it really didn't get guarded. So I was coming here as a 19-year-old. I mean, I was having my first, cocktails in a real bar with my friends. And then, of course, after the clubs, we'd come here and get fried rice. I used to see everybody here. I mean, I saw the Guns N' Roses here. I saw Keanu Reeves. I saw Drew Barrymore. And this is all through the late 80s and early 90s. That was my spot. We kind of had a circuit. You know, we would see Marty and Elaine, of course, the Dresden, the ski room. If anyone remembers the ski room.
I love the ski room.
Yeah, the ski room was great. We would go to the Burgundy room, which was one of the more newer places to go. And of course, we'd come to the Formosa.
Nice.
It was almost my exact crawl. So we were definitely in the same place at one point.
So the statute of limitations for that is completely run out. So nobody can turn me in anymore. So don't think about it.
I think you're safe. I wish I had been in LA during that era. So my experience is much newer to the Formosa, but I think everybody has a story connection to it, which brings me to a question for you, Alison, with Vintage LA and the work that you do and tireless, championing these kinds of places. From your perspective, what does it mean when we lose one of these legacy businesses? And what does it do to you? And what does it mean?
Well, it's interesting because before I started Vintage LA, I really just talked about the loss of places with my friends and thinking that, was I the only one that cared, or was maybe my friends remembered the places I was talking about. When I started Vintage LA, how emotional hundreds of people will get over losing a restaurant or a bar, or a favorite boutique, a stand, Tail of the Pop, when that went away years ago. That was devastating for us. It's part of our childhood. I don't say you have to live in LA to understand it or be grown up here. There's architecture of LA than anything else. Like the roadside eateries, like with the Idle Hour and the Barrel and the pup, the stand, and this whimsical type architecture. And when we start to lose that, LA starts to lose its character a bit.
Yeah. So this week, and I know you posted on Alison, Chateau Marmont has announced that they're going to transform into a private club. Again, another legacy business of a different type, but legendary in terms of LA stories. What are your thoughts on that, either one of you?
I'm so angry about it. So, I do have this forum, and I'm very lucky to have it. I like when people voice their opinions as well. I'm not on there to say, it's only my opinion. I do want to hear the people's opinions. And when I kind of posted that it might become a members only club by the end of the year, it was a really, again, an emotional thread of people saying, well, God, now during a pandemic, we're already losing so much. Now you're going to take away the most historic hotel on Sunset Strip, and it won't be open to the residents or the tourists or anybody. You can't take a stroll through it. I mean, they were pretty strict anyway over there about who came in, but you made a reservation for dinner, you could go. Mm-hmm. And now I don't know. I'm really hoping it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do the same thing. Members only, Formosa. What do you think?
Oh, that's it. Bye-bye, guys.
No, I honestly, I got the news from you, Alison, mm-hmm. And I honestly have no response to it whatsoever. I'm just so flabbergasted by the entire concept that I don't even get it.
I thought I was reading The Onion. I really did not believe that could ever even possibly. Isn't that what the Soho House is for? I don't know. Exactly. I don't see it a historic hotel becoming a members only. It's, we'll see what happens.
Well, Bobby, maybe the 1933 group can take on another place since you just keep on adding to your collection. Which can you talk a little bit about that? Because you've done the Idle Hour, the Highland Park Bowl, Formosa, very soon, fingers crossed, Tail of the Pup. What is it about these places that is attracts to you, but that has also been an essential part of your business model where, in pre-COVID days, you can make money and still preserve the character of LA.
You know, I grew up an artist, designer. I never really grew up a business person. I never really knew how to make a lot of money, to be honest. I just followed my passion. I followed my heart with everything I did. And, you know, growing up in Los Angeles, you know, I was so attracted to LA because it was a giant movie set. It was this fantasy world that anybody who came from anywhere else in the entire world would experience. You would drive around LA and you would see Angeline in her pink Cadillac, and you would see Tell the Pop and the Hollywood sign, and it was magical. You see palm trees. We don't have palm trees in the Midwest or anywhere else. So LA was a huge attraction, you know, and sadly, you'd walk down Hollywood Boulevard in the 80s and 90s, and you'd be, you know, walking over bodies and walking over trash. And I always felt, gosh, it's so sad. You know, Hollywood is probably the most famous city in the entire world. Yet we don't treat it like the landmark that it truly is. It's like having an extremely famous celebrity, and one day they just decide to stop showing them because they move on to someone new. And, you know, and it doesn't work that way. That's why people that are 13 years old still know who Elvis Presley is, still know who Marilyn Monroe is. It's because you can hide these people. They can pass away, but they still live on. Yeah. And so when we start removing these things, we're removing this warm blanket that surrounds us of comfort, this familiarity. You know, we're natural creatures of familiarity. Yes, we love new things. We love the latest and greatest. But when you start pulling away the foundation, the house you grew up in, your favorite, your shirt from high school, you don't realize that that's a foundation that you've grown on. And that's what allows you to love new things, because you have these old things to cling on to and find comfort in. And I think people start feeling very lost and empty and chaotic when their foundations are pulled away. I know I do. I know every year I see more and more things that I don't see anymore. I've grew up my whole life driving around seeing, and suddenly they're not there, and suddenly they're not there. It's really like your parents selling the house you grew up in. I mean, you cry. Anyone who's experienced that will cry, and they miss that old house. And I don't know how many times, I wish everyone could raise their hand, but how many times have you visited the home you grew up in? Whether your family still lives there or not, it's an emotional attachment. And it's the same way with our cities that we grew up with.
Hey, Bobby, a number of people are asking about the Tale of the Pop. Can you share briefly, you know, what's your plan there, or what you can share?
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, and this is first breaking news. We haven't even told press or anything yet. So, you know, as the press knows, we did buy the hot dog. It has been in a warehouse in storage since about 2007 or so. We've been slowly restoring it, and we have secured an amazing location for it. Nice. I was extremely adamant. You know, it had to be in Hollywood, West Hollywood. It had to be as close to the original location as possible. Obviously, across from the Beverly Center is now a ginormous hotel, so that was not an option. La Cienega Boulevard itself has changed a bit since, you know, my heyday. It's a little different. So we found an incredible location. I won't say exactly, but it's near Fairfax and Melrose. And that is going to be the new home of Tell the Pup. It's on a corner. It's a fantastic 45-degree corner. We secured our lease beginning of the year. Plans have been drawn. Plans are into the city. It'll be about 4 months for back and forth with the city. and then another 6 months of build out. So we're looking at springtime of next year to be open.
Woo!
That is super exciting.
Yeah.
and I got.
It's really been on a journey. That's been on a long journey.
Yeah, so you know firsthand the journey the Tale of the Pup has been on. I remember first seeing it, I think, at the age of 10, and I'm on a new journey now. This is what's exciting. My new journey is the discovery process, and it was the same with Formosa. Meeting the people that worked there, meeting the family that owned it, finding the old ingredients and recipes. Incredibly, we have found some amazing stuff. The menu that started in 1946 and lasted all the way until Eddie Blake bought it in sometime in the late 70s. We have uncovered the entire thing. So we are right now experimenting with some of the old recipes, and I got to say they're amazing, and they're not unlike the hot dog you would have had, in the 1990s.
I'm looking forward to that. Hey, cognizant of time, can we do a tour of the Formosa?
Yes, of course we can do a tour. I'd be happy to. Now, I have my cocktail, which we will demonstrate for everybody. I am sitting in, you can see maybe behind me, the infamous Bugsy Siegel. I am sitting in his booth. And one of the fascinating things about the Formosa, everyone knows the Formosa celebrities, all the celebrities that hung out here and signed the book. But what really started the Formosa was the crime, the gangsters, the mob. It's what really started it. And Bugsy Siegel was a huge part of that. I'll tell an interesting story first before we start. Everyone knows kind of that Jimmy Bernstein and Lem Kwan were the owners of the Formosa. But before they were the owners, the place had an owner called, am I on there?
You're on.
Adrian?
You're on.
Okay, yeah. Maxie Goldman. And Maxie Goldman first owned this place and lost it in a poker game to Jimmy Bernstein, who at the time was a young boxer. Most likely one of the boxers mixed up with the mob. So Jimmy Bernstein wins this in a poker game. And not very soon after that, Maxie was found shot in the back of the head in a phone booth right outside on Santa Monica Boulevard. So right off the bat, I mean, the intrigue just starts. And once Jimmy Bernstein took the place over, Bugsy Siegel was already running his operations out of here. He was running a bookie operation. He had about 9 telephones set up in the back of the train car and was taking bets, most likely from United Artists Studios, a lot of the producers and whatnot. And I guess there's a lot of talk of also running a escort service late at night out of here, which is a bit interesting. But I'm gonna flip my screen here if I can, and start a little tour. All right, there we are. And so we've obviously honored Bugsy Siegel with some photographs, just to be able to tell that story. One of the other fascinating stories, so Bugsy Siegel owned a haberdashery in Los Angeles, men's clothing and hat shop. And right here on the floor, he had installed a floor safe. And you can see we've made a little plaque and a little bit of cash in there, just to let people know, hey, that's a floor safe. Now, here's the great story. What would happen was, so Bugsy Siegel owned a haberdashery. And so he had to find a way to launder his cash. Now, the cash that came in from the betting and the ladies of the night, so to speak, came into here to the Formosa. And a lot of times they never exchanged hands with Bugsy. They would go directly into that safe, which was under a booth. And people would bring their cash in to make the drops. Usually his muscle would go out and collect the cash, bring it in, make the drops. The next day, the cash was stuffed into hat boxes. And those hat boxes were then transported and delivered to the haberdashery, which would look just like any old normal operation, having hats delivered to the men's shop. And that's how the transfer of money came about. Now, a lot of people ask me, how do you know all of this information? Like, is this just wise tale stuff? Well, the fascinating thing, there was a man named Lindy. He was a bartender, and he worked at the Formosa for close to 50 years. And he kept a journal of all that 50 years, of all the seedy crime, all the celebrities, all the dirty stories. That's how we know about John Wayne falling asleep in the booth. That's how we know about, Lana Turner and her gangster boyfriend. So we're so fortunate to have that incredible journal. It was never published, and we have the original copy. It's not very exciting to read. It's more of a factual, almost diary type read, but maybe one day we will make a book. And then we are making a book about the history of the Formosa.
Nice.
So a lot of Lindy's, quotes and anecdotes and stories will go into that book. And I'm going to flip back around here and start our tour. I suppose some people are probably on here who have never been to the Formosa. And you may notice that right off the bat, it is a Asian Chinese themed restaurant. The story there is, I'll pan around here, this man right here, Lem Quan. Now, Lem Quan worked for Jimmy Bernstein. This is Jimmy Bernstein here on the left. He was a chef. This is Lem's family after they moved from China. And he was instrumental in shaping what the Formosa became. In the late 40s, he really wanted to bring his culture and the things that he knew into the restaurant. So he started making his Chinese dishes. Prior to that, it was more of a steak and potatoes place. And you could kind of get almost anything here, more of a diner style. Bernstein and Lem Quan started collecting celebrity photographs from every celebrity that would ever come in. And this place had a very symbiotic relationship with the studio directly across the street. It was originally in the 20s, the Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks studio. And then, of course, it became United Artists. And United Artists is when a lot of the hit movies we know now were made. All of Elvis's movies, most of Marilyn Monroe's movies, all the very famous celebrities made movies across the street. And they would be there filming for a year, several months, and they would just make the Formosa their second home. And it's written in Lindy's book of which booth everybody loved. The first booth we come to was John Wayne's booth. And this was made famous by John Wayne used to hang out here a lot. He would drink whiskey straight. And whenever he would have too many, he would just sleep in the booth. And being respectful business owners, they would just lock the doors and leave him there. And they would come back the next morning, and he was usually in the kitchen making breakfast. And then he'd head on back to the studio across the street. This was one of Lem's lucky Buddhas that everybody would rub the belly to make a wish. Luckily, the grandson of Lem Quan saved all the artifacts, because as you may have heard, about 6 years ago or so, some people took over the place and kind of tore everything out of it. All the celebrity photos, all the knickknacks, and anything with character, they got rid of it. And there was a huge uproar amongst people in Los Angeles, and it quickly shut down. And that's kind of where we stepped in to take the place back over. This is Elvis's Decanter collection. Sometime in the late 70s, Jim Beam brand's whiskey decided to come out with an Elvis Decanter collectible series. I'm sure they had late night commercials. You can order them. The reason they are here is because the Colonel, who was Elvis's manager, was a regular here with Elvis. And he would continue to frequent the place. And so every time these decanters would come out, the Colonel would bring them to Lem. And there's a picture of Lem and the Colonel sitting in this particular booth right here. And apparently this was Elvis's favorite booth. And of course, there's always the story about how he forgot the tip and decided to show up the next day with a brand new Cadillac. And apparently it's true, because we've heard many stories and gotten it documented several times. So that's amazing. Now, of course, this is Johnny Stempinato and Lana Turner's booth, the famous booth from the movie LA Confidential. Johnny Stempinato was the muscle man for Mickey Cohen and Bugsy Siegel. When Bugsy Siegel was assassinated, Stempinato and Mickey Cohen took over the operation, and they continued running the bookie operation out of the train. Now, we mentioned the train earlier. I'm going to walk back to it. This is now the restored interior of the train. And this train, as I've mentioned before, is from 1904 to 1906, and was the very first red car train to roll off the line and become what we know as the red car train. And it was old and decommissioned, by about 1938 or so. And they were replaced with different models. They became a little shorter. And then these trains ended up becoming, I guess, kind of what you would describe nowadays as a container. So if you wanted to add a little room or, make a little house for yourself, you could go buy a cheap container and you could add it onto your restaurant. And so that's what happened. In 1940, they went and bought this train, and they decided, hey, let's make some extra dining space for our customers. And they kept adding celebrity photographs and whatnot. And if you came here in the 90s or the 2000s, you really didn't see much of this train car. You didn't see the wood. You didn't see the upper windows because it had all been kind of drywalled and plastered over. And people always ask me, why do you think that is? Why do you think they tried to hide the fact that it was a train car? And I tell people it's the same way you would hide a container today. If you bought a cheap metal container, you'd probably try to make it look like a wood house or something a little nicer. So that's why it never was as beautiful as it is now. And this is one of those things that you have to ask yourself during the restoration process. You have to ask yourself, okay, what is more important? Leaving this train car covered up, drywalled over, painted over, or is it more important to showcase the fact that it's the oldest surviving red car train in existence and restore it to its grandeur? Of course, I made that decision. That was my call. I'm a car guy, and so I couldn't really pass up the opportunity to restore this train to its former glory. And I haven't had any complaints so far. So if anyone misses the drywall and the old paint, well, don't bother me.
I don't think you're going to get any complaints, Bobby. The train looks great. Hey, a couple of people have asked the question. Maybe we missed it, but why is it called the Formosa?
Great question. So it dates back a long way. I guess the Portuguese had kind of stumbled upon what is now the island of Taiwan, across from Japan. And they had named it Formosa, which means beautiful island. And they had a small Portuguese colony there for several years. This is in like the mid 1800s. And they went away. I think the Spaniards came in, and then eventually it just became Taiwan. And I think to the Taiwanese people, it is kind of a fond, endearing term, like the old Formosa, meaning the old Taiwan. Mm-hmm. And so Lem Quan, who wasn't exactly from Taiwan, he was from China, but I think he felt that would be a beautiful name for his restaurant, and somewhat nostalgic for him, as it is now for us.
Yeah. Hey, Bobby, while you're in the area, can you talk a little bit about the exhibit that you added around Chinese Hollywood actors and part of the reason that you did that?
Yes, absolutely. The bar back here. This is the bar in the back room. Now, this back room did not exist before. It was an outdoor patio. And it was built back in a time when the smoking ban went into place in the early 2000s. And so it was very important to have smoking patios at that time. That's why it was built onto the back of it. But we don't really need smoking patios anymore. So I wanted to enclose the back room and also make it feel like it was always part of the Formosa, as well as give it some LA history. Now, if anyone else listening grew up in Los Angeles and maybe is over the age of 45, you might remember a place called the Emu, which was in Chinatown. And it was another very similar venue to the Formosa, Chinese American themed, and it was another great little night spot. They didn't card you, so I remember going there in the very late 80s before it went away. The Northridge earthquake is what damaged it so much, and they ended up closing. But I had heard rumors from a friend of mine that she knew the lady that owned the Emu bar. And so I always kind of kept that in the back of my head. They had moved the bar from Chinatown to Glendale to a place called the Cinnabar. And the Cinnabar was there for many years before it closed. And after it closed, the woman, whose name was Flame, moved the bar to her house as decor. So once we started the Formosa project, I tracked her down and I said, hey, do you know the Formosa? And she said, yes, of course. So I went to her house in Altadena and I told her all about what I was doing and how I would love to acquire the Emu bar and move it to the Formosa for people to enjoy. And she loved the idea too, thankfully. So what we're seeing here is a bar that was originally at the Emu. The story gets a little more fascinating because we hired a historian to dig up a lot of history on the Formosa. And we also met Arthur Dong. Arthur Dong is a filmmaker and a Chinese American historian. And we ended up discovering that this back bar was used as a prop in the movie The Good Earth in the 40s. And the movie The Good Earth went to China and bought tons of antiquities and brought back to use in the movie. And then after the movie was over, they had a fire sale and people could come buy the pieces from the movie. And so that's how this bar ended up in Chinatown in the 1940s and is now here at the Formosa. So it was a real pleasure to be able to combine two Chinese American kitschy, campy places that we remember from Los Angeles here. Now, I'll touch on, I know what you're asking, and there is some sensitivity. There's talk of cultural appropriation these days. The themed places are being questioned about, is the person who built them really true to the nature of what it is? Now, this place is entirely Len Kwan's baby, and I think people understand that, and people, and hopefully I can continue raising this baby the way that Len Kwan saw fit. And Arthur Dong, the historian, felt that way too. And so when I talked to him about doing an installation here on the Asian American actor history of Hollywood and the movies, he thought that was a great idea. We got together and we did it. So he compiled movie cards from a lot of the famous Asian American movies. He an incredible collection, and they're in actual chronological order, which is mind-boggling, you can imagine. We have a bartender upstairs at the patio, and he's gonna make the Emilu drink for us. Now, the Emilu drink was the drink that they served at the Emilu, which is the bar in the back. There were several years where the Emilu called it the Tidy Bowl because it was blue in color. We don't call it the Tidy Bowl anymore. We call it the Emilu. And I'm gonna head upstairs here. Let me flip the camera. And we're gonna head up here to the bar. And I already told him it used to be called the Tidy Bowl, but we don't call it that anymore. Sounds good. I'll do a little pan here at the patio, and you can see we do have a few customers that have joined us. And I hope that everybody can come by if you're in the neighborhood and need to get out. Here we go.
Today we're going to start with an ounce and a half of a light rum. Here at the Formosa, we're using the Bacardi Light. Then we're going to do a half ounce of our Lucky Polarna. Half ounce of our Blue Carousel. And then a half an ounce of our apricot liqueur. This gives it a little bit of a sweeter bite and rounds out all the alcohol. And then we're going to add about an ounce and a half of pineapple juice. Going to give it a nice shake. So we'll start putting on the ground. And that, sir, is our Indian cocktail.
There we go. And you can kind of see why they would call it the Tidy Bowl. Thank you, sir. I'm going to take this if you don't mind.
It looks delicious, Bobby.
I am going to switch here. I always wear my customers as a good owner of an establishment. So someone told me today I look like a COVID cowboy.
You do. Hey, Allison, can you come back?
That was fascinating. I really enjoyed that tour so much.
No, it's fun. It's fun to be able to see the Formosa again. It's just one of those places that you have to experience in real life. So this is as close as you possibly can get to it right now. But the rooftop is open. Takeout is available, right? Too. You can do takeout, right, Bobby?
Yes, absolutely. You can do takeout. Go to the website. You can do it through Grubhub, a lot of other places you can do it through.
Okay. So we're a little over time. I just have one last question. You've been answering some of the questions that people have been asking about. We are going to put the recipe for the bowl. I know that was good at name, but we'll put that in there so everyone can experience the drink as well. You all should have got it as part of the registration too. But one last question: what's the biggest story or lore that surrounds the Formosa? Either one of you, kind of that is out there. What's the big story that you hear over and over again? Or what is one of the surprising stories that you heard after you reopened? I know you've been meeting people all the time that have been coming in and sharing their experiences. What's something that we don't know about the Formosa that you haven't already talked about?
One of the things that I was most interested in during the construction, during the year we were building the place, we had so many people coming over from the studio across the street. And they would ask me, did you find the tunnel? And I would say, what are you talking about? And they said, there's a giant folklore at the studio across the street that there was a hidden tunnel that went under the Formosa street from the bar to the studio. And that we'd never found, unfortunately. But you never know, one day the road might collapse and you'll find a whole bunch of empty bottles down there. You know, one of my very favorite things, and this is from my generation, when the Formosa was under threat of being torn down and turned into a parking lot, people rallied. And this is one of the things I want to tell people now. Look at that photograph that you have on your thing of everyone in front of the Formosa with picket signs. Now, we have not seen this in way too long. And this is why the Formosa was saved. People need to rally. You cannot just do an Instagram post saying, save this place. You should rally your friends together and march on it. And just the way we're making change now across our country, we have to do the exact same thing to save our landmark businesses. And when news got out that the place was going to be torn down in the 80s, Bono, the singer from U2, called Lem Kwan on the phone from Ireland. And he said, I just heard this news. Is this true? And Lem Kwan said, yes. And he said, we cannot let this happen. We have to save the Formosa. And he launched a campaign, and he wrote on a napkin in a pub in Dublin where he was sitting, he wrote a poem about the Formosa, and he mailed it to the Formosa. And that poem's going to go in our book when it comes out. But it takes that type of passion for people to get together and save businesses. And that's what I'd love to see happen with Tay and many other spots around Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We need people to support these places while they're in business, but also when they're at risk, and to come out and really show that these places do matter, but also show what 1933 Group has done so well is that they can make money in pre-COVID days.
Pre-COVID.
But we can still support them in current COVID days by, visiting them, getting takeout, going to the rooftop, being safe, obviously, but we need to do that because we need to ensure that these places survive during this period of time when it's really touch and go for a lot of them. So I would encourage everybody that's on tonight to do that and think about how they can do that individually to support a legacy business and support the work that, that Alison's doing with Vintage LA, and follow her. Learn so much about the city through the posts that she does and the pictures that she comes up with. It's amazing, the stories I've learned through Alison's work. And Bobby, you've got not just the Formosa, you've got the Idle Hour, so many other places to be visiting.
Well, you know what? One thing I always say, and I tell Alison this all the time, I say, we are in this battle together. We're like an army. And we're just in this big fight, just fighting to save wonderful places.
Bobby, I have to ask you something. I mean, every week somebody must come up to you and say, you got to save this. You got to save that. I mean, we're so lucky in LA to have you. I don't know what we would do because you are saving our history. But
Well, thank you.
you're going to save everything. I know you are.
Well, I'll tell you my response. I do get that a lot. I get people, oh, you should save this and you should save that. And I say, no, you should do it. Because I can't do it all. We are stretched thin.
We can't do it like you. That brown derby over there. I don't know. Like
I'll consult. Somebody just get the money and do it, and I will consult.
Well, as I've told you, Bobby, more than a few times, we need to clone you and the rest of the 1933 group, because we need more people that, so if anybody listening that wants to do something about a business model like 1933 group, there's a need. And we need more people to help save these places and continue to operate them and support the people that are trying to do it. So please visit the Conservancy's website, learn more about legacy businesses. We'll be sharing more about what's going on with various places like this across the city. We appreciate your support. So one last question just to end us on. Multiple people have asked this question. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but let's ask it. What is the classic car that you drive, or your favorite classic car, Bobby? And Allison, I know you drive one too, so you can share too. So Bobby first.
Oh, that's tough. I think my favorite car to drive is, I have a 1939 Ford Woody that was found on a chicken farm, and it still has the painting of the chicken farm on it. My friend Mike Wolf actually found it, the guy from American Pickers. This was long before he had a TV show. And the greatest thing about it is on the back tailgate of the Woody, it's hand-painted, "Baby chicks, be careful." Because they used to transport baby chickens around. So I would gotta say that's my favorite car.
That's a pretty good one. How about you, Allison?
Well, I actually bought my dream car last year. I mean, I grew up on like Heart to Heart, and I love American Gigolo, one of my favorite LA movies. So I did buy, I love that body of car, the 560 Mercedes, the 89 convertible. I bought it last year. And I got my license plate says vintage. So I personalized it. I'm the next Angelina, I guess.
I often see Allison's car around, so you know it by the plates. It's a great car. And I drive a 1970 VW Beetle. So we all have that love in mind, as well as legacy businesses and historic buildings, classic cars. So it all goes hand in hand. But I want to thank you guys so much for taking part in this and opening the doors to Formosa and being willing to share it, because everyone needs to get a Formosa fix right now. And again, thank you so much for being part of this, and thank everybody for tuning in tonight. And
Adrian, no, thank you. Thank you for putting this together. We would not have done this on our own. And thank you to the Conservancy for everything you guys do.
Absolutely, absolutely. So cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, everyone. Wish I had that drink.
Bye, everyone.